Good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to bring you back to my Murphy table here just to kind of give you a wargaming update on some projects that I've got going on, and I thought I would, just share a few things. First, what I wanted to show you, though, I don't know if the flash on the camera is going to help or hinder this, but what I wanted to show you was a little print and play project that I did, and this is for the Girls in Panzer board game. The only reason why I even thought of this, as I was looking through Facebook and was following some old school tactical posts, Mark Walker made a comment that he was like, there's a lot of people talking about old school tactical and posting videos and things, but it hadn't reached the hotness on Board Game Geek. And someone just made a passing comment, well, maybe if it had more anime girls or something in it. And I thought, oh yeah, I don't know, how would you put anime into that? And I thought, oh wait a minute, the Japanese, they already came up with that for us. They have Girls in Panzer, and it's got anime and tanks and things. It doesn't bring anime into old school tactical, but anyway, my mind has a tendency to wander. So I looked to see if there was even, kind of Girls in Panzer related stuff for a board game that I could make maybe my own counters for old school tactical. So if you're not familiar with Girls in Panzer, basically what it's saying is in a kind of an alternate-ish timeline in Japan, the girls' schools, or I don't know if it's just high school with the girls, but anyway, these high school girls, they have what's called tankery. And so it's like if you had archery or something after school classes, it's just they drive around in World War tanks and they do matches and tournaments. And I think they do a really good job of showing the technology, the different tanks and things like that. So it's kind of campy and cheesy, but there's a board game. So I thought, why don't I try to make my own print and play? So I have here counters. Now, the game itself is pretty simple. I found everything on Board Game Geek. Just look for Panzer Vor, V-O-R, Panzer Vor, and you could probably find this. And I just printed some stuff off. Now, this map, I'm using Conflict of Heroes because there was no map, but it had the counter sheets front and back. The game is a card-driven game, and the rules are fairly simple, but it plays pretty well. Honestly, I don't play it that much. I've played, just kind of messed around once or twice, but you get a bunch of tanks that you can create. I mean, there's just gobs and gobs of tanks. This is all tanks, and that's a lot, even for a war game by today's standards. Then it has some counters specifically for the different crew members and status markers. So again, quite a few markers that you have to play with. Now, the game came from a Japanese war game journal called Command. I think it's called Command, and I guess they put out, I'm not sure how often they put out a magazine, so if you can find a copy of this particular issue of Command, you could get the entire version of Girls in Panzer from them. Since I'm cheap, I just kind of, printed my own. If you're curious what I do when I make a print and play game, first thing I got to do is find cardboard for the pieces. So this is some priority mailboxes from our post office. You get them free. You just walk in and you can pick up a bunch of boxes. It's not terribly thick. It's probably a little thicker than like your average war game counters, but it does give for a sturdy playing piece. So now that I got the cardboard, the other thing I do is I find, wherever you live, it might be different, but I got these Avery full sheet mailing labels. So they're just huge, and they're 8.5-inch by 11-inch. So it's a full sheet of paper. So depending on where you live in the world, you might find A4. But I just get the whole page, print all the counter sheet to that label, paste the label onto the cardboard, and then get like a box cutter, cut it out, use like a metal ruler, and then there you go. You got double-sided pieces. I'm not very good at lining stuff up, so some of the counters on the front turn out great, and then some on the back are kind of misaligned. So that's not a fault of the game or anything, that's a fault of the person putting it together. But the way the game works is pretty simple. It does have some like kind of optional advanced rules. So for the basic game, you just drive around. You don't really drive through building hexes and whatnot. So you're just kind of going to stick to roads and open terrain, avoid the woods. So there's a little bit of maneuvering involved. And then when you shoot, shooting is real easy. You're going to have here is a distance number. So this weapon can shoot 13 hexes. And what you do is you count spaces to your target. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4. That's pretty close. You roll 2 dice 6, and you try to roll that number or higher to score a hit. So the further away your target is, the harder it is to hit. So if your target was at, say, that full 13, you couldn't hit it unless you had a card or one of your crews gave a bonus to hit. This crew gives a bonus to movement, and I forget what that one is. I forget what this one's called, but this lets you draw extra cards. Oh, that's their better side. Oh, that's for penetration. So some of these things give you bonuses to hit. So if my crew or a card that I drew gave me a bonus to hit, then I would add that to my dice roll and hope to get the 13. So anyway, this vehicle could shoot out to 13, and then I would need a crew bonus or a card bonus to actually make that roll. So yeah, real simple. And then you do have armor values. There's front, side, rear armor value. There's the movement. There's the damage. This is the size. This is a modifier, so if I'm shooting at something, I can look. The sample vehicles I brought, okay, like this one here, has a -1. So they're actually a little harder to hit because they're small. If you had like the mouse, that gives you a +1. It actually is a little bit easier to hit. So that's a dice roll modifier. So let's say they were coming at each other. These were front to front, and I counted 4. I roll my 2 dice, so I know that's a solid hit. Then I take my firepower number. And if I remember, this is just going off the top of my head, because now I got to try and remember. I believe you just roll 1 die, I think, for damage. So you're going to take your damage plus your roll, plus any card modifiers or crew modifiers. So that's 8 plus 5 is 13. Then I compare that to the front armor here, and then if the number is higher than the armor value, you destroy the vehicle. So it's simple. Now you do have cards. Now I didn't print these good at all. My cards are all many different sizes. But the way the game works is basically there's 2 phases. There's your draw. So your missions, in the mission scenario portion of the book, it will usually tell you that you all start with 5 cards. And it might tell you in the scenario setup that it wants you to have a specific set of cards, or just simply says draw 5 cards. On the first phase of your turn, there's like 4 phases. You draw a card, and you look at it, and then you have a handful of cards to play from. The second phase is the action phase. So now you're going to look at your action cards, and this is where it reminded me a little bit of like Memoir 44, commands and color kind of thing, card driven. Now it doesn't divide your play field up into different areas, but it just tells you based on the cards you have, like here's a reaction. So this you can play on either, when your opponent's doing something, play before your opponent resolves accuracy. For one of his shots, his accuracy is -1. But here's an actual action card. Select one of your tanks to move. So that's what you would do. You would say, well, on my action phase, I'm going to select 2 tanks to move. So you just discard the card. You then move your 2 tanks. Now you have a movement value here. So that's the hexes you can go. So let's see, 3/3 Panther. That's got 4 movement. So you would just move it that many hexes. So again, very simple. After you do your 1 action, there's an event phase. So let's find some event cards here. Here's an event. So if I had this in my hand, it says, select 1 card from the discard pile and add it to your hand. Or one of your immobilized tanks may move again. So just depending on how your cards play out, you can immobilize your enemy, put smoke, do reactions. and then you have cards that you could play to bring people back or make immobile vehicles move again. So there's like 79 cards. You also have, depending on the mission you're playing, there are some scenario cards that will have effects on the game as you play. Then if you want to add a little complexity to it, again, depending on some cards you play, there might be smoke that you can drop down, so it has smoke counters. You might have ones that say you can't play events, because that's the symbol for event. Or you might get one that says no actions, so you can't work in the action phase for that vehicle. Again, you have either individual crew members, or you can get an entire crew that applies modifiers to your tank. And you would just spend it, so like you could say, well, I'm going to go ahead and spend this +1 for my damage, so this crew does extra damage, and then you flip it to the reverse side showing that it's been used, and then eventually you could maybe get an event card that brings them back to full strength. It also has rules for turret turning, so turret facing. So for example here, come on, focus. That's not focusing very well. Okay, it focuses when it's away, but okay, this one, because these counters are poorly printed, I apologize. But anyway, this, I know you can't see it, but it says it has a turret rotation speed of 2. So I could put my turret here on it, and you know, I could say I'm going that way, but then I'm going to turn it 2 hex sides to face my opponent. So even though it's just a simple print and play game, and it plays super fast, you're just going through cards, you're looking at the board. Some of the missions are like, you know, just the basic training ones maybe have like 2 tanks on 2 tanks, up to where you can have full matches where you spend points to buy your equipment. But the game plays really, really quick. And, you know, that's kind of fun. It's very much a beer and pretzels light game, but, you know, it has a lot of real familiar armor. It's got Russian equipment, British equipment, American equipment, Russian equipment. I think it's got some Japanese tanks as well. So it really lets you recreate the battles that you see from the Girls in Panzer TV series. There was an expansion that did the Girls in Panzer movie. And then the rules make you let you create your own tournaments using the schools that come with the card game. So one thing, though, that makes it a little difficult is, for the most part, the way the game plays is if you destroy a tank, you flip it over, and then it has the surrender flag that pops up like you see in the cartoon. But not all of the tanks have that. So some of the tanks, you flip it, and it has a tank right on the other side. So you get a wide variety of tanks, but some of the counters are double-sided, so you might not get as many tanks as you could if the game was designed with, you know, 1 tank per counter. So it's kind of an odd mix. Quite a few tanks have the surrender side, so you have a lot of individual tanks to play with, and then some are double-sided with tanks. But you still get, like I said, I mean, there's a bunch of tank counters that I created for this. What is kind of cool, though, is if you're playing the game with the mindset of that you're doing, like following the TV series, they have a mechanic where in the cartoon, the main character they follow is in a Panzer IV tank. And so as you play this game, there are certain conditions that let you promote the tank. So you go from like a Panzer IV-F to like, you could be like in a Panzer IV-D, go to a Panzer IV-F, you go to a Panzer IV-H, it just lets you promote your vehicle up to the next stronger version of the tank. And you usually don't do that during the match, but if you meet certain requirements, you can promote your tank up to the next higher version of that tank, kind of promote it along a little bit. So it has, not role-playing, but if you're doing a tournament where you go from match to match, you could possibly make your tanks stronger. So, like I said, cute beer and pretzel type of game. You can print it out. I'm sure you could probably do a much better job printing the cards and the counters. But if you want something that's fast, maybe introduce younger players, plus it's got, cartoon stuff they might know about. And if you're familiar with the cartoon show, then it all makes sense. It totally makes sense that, it's like the Harry Potter of the tank warfare. You've got the British coming, and then they're taking on the underdog school, and then they're driving through town, destroying people's shops, and anyway, so that's Girls in Panzer. So I'll just put that away real quick. Now, another thing I printed out, and this is very cool. I saw this on Board Game Geek, and this is from Once Upon a Game. I don't know his actual name, but he runs the Once Upon a Game channel, and I've checked out his channel before. He had some lock and load videos. I've wanted to get into lock and load. I haven't actually picked it up yet. So I've seen some of his videos before and does a really good job, so you can check out his channel. When Old School Tactical came out, I saw he posted this on Board Game Geek, but I hadn't printed it out. So what this is essentially it takes a lot of the onboard number tracking that you see on the outside of the board and then puts it on this piece of paper. So you have like your turn track, impulse points, victory points, enemy casualties for, you know, your however you want to break the colors, you know, German, Russian, or whatever. You can track how many impulse dice you have for that scenario. So you can have this out on the side of your board. So I printed this, laminated it, but when I didn't do that right away. When I got this page, actually, I just downloaded it a couple days ago. This has been on the Geek for, I don't know, maybe a week or so. But once upon a time, he came to one of my videos and posted a link to this. And so I said, okay, let me go ahead, print it out, and then I'll kind of test it out a little bit and give him some thoughts. This is brilliant. I laminated it. That way it won't get all dirty. So I just bought one of those self-laminating packages. And if I had a better marker, this particular marker is not the best. But anyway, you know, I can write 3 impulse dice, 2 impulse dice for whoever. And then if I need to, you know, I can just mark off. Now, I put the counters away because I was going to show you that when you print this, my first concern was how big do I print this, because my printer automatically wants to do a fit to page. So I was talking to my wife, do I do fit to page? Do I uncheck the fit to page? So I unchecked fit to page because that would make the boxes bigger. And I'm glad I did. So here's the turn marker. And as you can see, they fit pretty darn well. So you could actually use your counters from the game and then, you know, use that to track stuff. Now obviously when it's laminated, it really makes things slick. So you have to be careful when you know, obviously when you bump stuff. So I would recommend if you go to the Board Game Geek and get this tracker, make sure your printer prints as big as possible. That way you can, you know, fit the markers, or you can use, you know, your dry erase to keep track of notes and stuff. But I wanted to show you that tracker, and then, you know, how does it play? It plays great. I mean, this tracker is wonderful. As a solo player, see on my Murphy table, you know, my wall is right there. So when I have the board, and the board for Old School Tactical is pretty big, which we'll pull back out and I'll show you here in a little bit. Not on this video, but in other videos I do, you'll see the map takes up a good portion of my Murphy table. And then I gotta like stretch to get back here to move markers and stuff on the map. But when I have the map out, I mean, this is great. I just find somewhere off to the side of the table, lay this out, and then I can keep track of everything. So this is really handy. And I mean, there's really not much more to say. It's great. Just lets you take all the information, put it on the side of the map, and you can track it here. Now here's something else that's cool for people who like to use other game products with their game. You know, I mean, let's say, just for example, I love using other maps because sometimes I find other games have maps that have terrain I want to play with. So again, I could use a Conflict of Heroes map, play my game, and yet off to the side I still have all the information. So I just lay it there, play, and put it there. I have not done that yet. I'm just saying that possibility is there because I thought about that as I was playing with the map. Oh hey, this just lets me use any map I want, and I can still track all my game data. So that's something else. So make sure you get that. If you play Old School Tactical, especially if you're a solo player so you don't have to keep reaching across the map, just download this file from Board Game Geek on the Old School Tactical game page. It's the file by Once Upon a Time, and it's the game tracker. What else are we doing? Well, I've been watching a lot of videos for Advanced Squad Leader, Advanced Tobruk, and I thought, I really would love to try those. They're just fascinating to watch because there is so much depth. But I can't see spending $100 on the rule book for Advanced Squad Leader, and that's just the rule book. And then you got to go and spend 120 bucks on the Beyond Valor Module 1 or whatever module we get into. But Module 1, that includes the counters for all the things that mark your actions. So 120 bucks plus $100 rule book. Now, if you go, you can find on Amazon, you can sometimes find the second edition rulebook binder for like 70 bucks, so you can save a little bit of money there, but you still need Beyond Valor, and it's in its third edition printer, so it looks great. It's just, man, that's like 200 bucks. Now, for a collector of games, and that's the hobby, that's an okay price, but I'm a wide collector, and so, $200 to get into a new game system is pretty daunting. So I actually started going back looking at Panzer. Now, this isn't on the same scale necessarily as complexity as maybe Advanced Squad Leader. Advanced Squad Leader has nice concepts to it and then lots of little specific rules that modify what you're doing. And for those that maybe are curious, I think Panzer gives you a good taste of what a complex game could be like. Panzer does come with a basic game rules, so you have a basic concept. Basic rules take about 16 pages, 17, let's see. Yeah, so they take like 20 pages, and it's still not complex as Advanced Squad Leader may ever be, but then Panzer starts to bring out some of the advanced rules, and then it's got its own set of optional rules that, once again, adds to the complexity of the game. And then, if you're an Advanced Squad Leader player, then this is great because now we have charts, lots of charts, charts that even have fold-outs. So again, maybe not as complex as to what you're seeing with Advanced Squad Leader, but there's quite a bit of data. One of the things I liked about the Advanced Squad Leader when I looked at it was your infantry counter, for example, has like a firepower. Like let's look over here. Let's pretend for a second that we've got an Advanced Squad Leader counter. This counter is from Old School Tactical, but here you've got firepower. You have your defense. Now in Advanced Squad Leader, the last number is your morale, so they don't call it defense; they call that morale. And here you have movement. Well, in Advanced Squad Leader, infantry have their advance, which is like 4 hexes, and then they can run or sprint, and they get winded. They actually have a couple different movements built in, and that number is not on the counter. That's something that you learn. So the numbers here are a little bit different. So if this was Advanced Squad Leader, it'd be like firepower, range, morale. Now, what's cool about that is, so in concept that's simple, but then when you want to really differentiate different types of units, you can underline a value, and then underlining one of these values will give it different meaning. Or you could put a square around it, and that gives it meaning. Or you could put another sort of sub number or subscript, which again gives you meaning. So you might have 3 basic numbers, but those numbers can represent quite a few different things based on how it's presented with boxes or lines. Well, with Panzer, the counters virtually have no information. So if you're a person who likes lots of information that are very specific to that tank or to that infantry, then that's where these data cards come in. And then, there's no way you're going to put this on the counter, or maybe you want to play with this as your counter. You would need a very big map with very big hexes. But the idea is, you just set this off to the side, and then every single T70 you bring onto the board uses this data. So they have lots of defensive information, and then lots of gunnery data based on the type of ammo. So it's still interesting to look at Advanced Squad Leader, and I could see why some people say that Advanced Squad Leader still has a more advanced armor system than Panzer. Again, I think that's subjective to how you perceive what detailed or complexity is for you. But Panzer gives you a lot of data crunching if you want it. They have a basic system where you have, let's see if it shows it here. You can do an armor where you have front armor of 12, rear armor of 7, or you can use your data charts. Gunnery values are pretty detailed regardless of basic or advanced rules, but if you go advanced rules, then there's like GP fire for, high explosive rounds, machine guns, things like that. So with ASL, they also can still represent quite a bit of data on that one counter because, again, you can underline values, box values, give specific gun types. Another thing that Advanced Squad Leader does above and beyond what you have in Panzer is that they usually have, I think it's like Section H, they call that the Armory, and then it goes in and tells you very specific details about each type of tank. And I saw this by looking at a printout for the Advanced Squad Leader Starter Kit 3 where it talks about tanks, and it has a section where it tells you about the very specific tanks, like it says, an M4 Sherman, but it mentions multiple variants of an M4 Sherman, and it says, well, if you're using this type of Sherman, instead of wet ammo, you had dry ammo, and so you get this kind of modifier when defending, or if you're the wet ammo, it's this kind of modifier. So it really went into the specifics, and here I don't think it goes into that much of specific, because I know some people are like, when they're used to playing advanced simulation, they're thinking Advanced Squad Leader where there's rules for 2-man turrets, 3-man turrets versus a full crew, and then the very specific types. Like there might be some actual specific modifiers between a Panther A and a Panther G to reflect mobility and things like that, and some of that stuff is not in the Panzer game. But I think Panzer, if you're looking for something detailed with lots of numbers and crunch, this is a pretty good way to go. And then I've got the expansions 2 and 3, so you got your playbooks. There's a lot of material. I mean, I'm sure that if you were to take all of this, you could put it into a binder, and you still might not end up with the page count of rules and situations and scenarios that you get with, say, Advanced Squad Leader, but there's a lot of game in the Panzer series. Now, Advanced Squad Leader has been around for a long time, so there's a lot more material, so you got to really kind of decide if that's what you want to get into. Panzer, this is the 2nd edition reprint, and it's got, I think, 3 expansions, so it takes out to the West Front. So there's quite a bit of gaming that you can do here, even with just those few expansions. So I think Panzer's a good one to look at if you haven't yet, although I had to admit I don't like their maps. Well, that's a whole other discussion. We won't go into that, but the maps are kind of sad. But anyway, I just wanted to share that Panzer was something else I decided to pull back off the shelf and play with, simply because it gives you some crunch, not quite Advanced Squad Leader crunch, and this does focus mostly on the armor. The infantry rules still don't impress me. I had to admit that when I do play Panzer, it's for the armor and not for the infantry. Okay, so I'm going to show you one last thing. This is not a war game, but this is a game I play with my son. This is awesome. Mage Wars Academy. If you've ever wondered about like Magic the Gathering, I don't play Magic the Gathering, I don't play Pokemon, I don't play Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't play any kind of card game. But this. I did get another one that my wife and I play. It's like Ashes, Rise of the Phoenix. But that's completely different than this. Mage Wars Academy. This is a great player versus player card game. People compare just about everything to Magic the Gathering. So the similarities to Magic the Gathering is just simply, it's one wizard against your opponent who's the other wizard. So the basic rules are not complicated. The rule book packs in about 20 pages, 26 pages, 25 pages of rules. And the way that this works compared to other card games is pretty simple. You have your hit points. You got some counters here to help you track some... Sorry, I got distracted by the pop-out counter. Anyway, you got these counters that help you track status effects that you might have, charges, weakness, things like that. And that's all comes with this starter box. Now, this is what I thought was really cool about this game. It's not just your cards, there's also some dice rolling. So you do damage based on the numbers that come up on the dice when you hit your opponent. You got this 12-sided dice that you use to trigger some special abilities. You have to beat a target number to trigger an ability. And just to start you off, they give you a nice mana point and life point tracker, so you can track how much hit points or damage you've taken and how much mana you have each turn. But here's what makes this game really, really cool. If you've ever been curious about Magic the Gathering, or getting a card game that you want to play, with your kids, or I compare everything to playing with my kids because I'm a dad. I got a 12-year-old, and we play stuff together. But this game is great enough for any age, really, that's into card games. So, if you want to play with your friends and things like that, that's awesome, because this game actually has, I think, a lot of strategy compared to Magic the Gathering. I have played Magic the Gathering, but I don't play it anymore because I didn't like it. I don't like the shuffling the deck and hoping that you draw cards. With this game, I guess I should have had it the other way. Come here. Guess they stuck. With Mage Wars, you get a spell book, and your spell book is, you have some basically spell book building rules, and you put your spells in it. And then as you play, when it's your turn to cast a spell, based on how much mana you generate each turn, you just simply pay the mana cost of your spell, or a mana cost over, like you play this to the board, and then when you go to actually reveal it and cast it, you place this other mana cost. So some spells cost mana over a period of time, but you pick what you want, so it's not random. So as you're playing, you might say, hey, I'm going to play out a Razor Tusk now, and then after that, I'm going to maybe play another spell here to, it's my son's spell book. So you might play out a creature, but then later you might find something that lets you buff that creature that you just summoned. So that's why I thought this was an incredible game. So anybody who's looking into getting sort of a collectible card game, I don't know how collectible this is like Magic the Gathering, but if you want to get into something where you get to build your spell book, put in the spells that you want, this is great because the strategy is awesome. You just maybe you wait 2 turns to save up your mana and then cast something that's really expensive, or cast out a whole bunch of small creatures each turn. But the thing is, you're in control. You decide exactly what spells come out when you want it. So you don't have to draw, look at your hand, and then be like, oh man, I can't use any of these cards. I have nothing but land or nothing but creatures, but I don't have any mana. This, you always have options because you decide what you're casting. So I just thought I would share that real quick. And that's some of the gaming I've been up to lately. I know I haven't posted any kind of video in a while. We've got stuff going on here at home, but that's just some stuff I have coming up. So hey, if you want to share anything fun that you've been doing with gaming, put that in the comments. Always happy to learn about new games to check out. I might not spend $200 to buy the game system, but if it's something that's within the realm of affordability for myself, I don't mind checking things out. Let's see, I'll put this away. I thought, I'll show you one more thing. I saw this on Board Game Geek. Someone had mentioned that they did this. I think I saw this on a Conflict of Heroes. Someone was talking about storage options for your counters. Traditionally, people get like like Dan Vesser Games counter trays, or I've got some GMT counter trays, and I punch out my counters, trim the corners, and then stick them away in the trays. And then the trays take up a lot of space. I don't always have them categorized very well. So somebody said, well, for old school tactical, this works. This works for games where your counters come in a sprue where the pieces are individually stored. What I do, I just put a counter here. This is what I do. When I use my counters and I go to put them away, I just put them back in the sprue. Just pop it back in. And they fit fairly snug. I just store it back in the box. And Old School Tactical comes with 5 sprues, and so every time I play a game, I just pop the counter out, pop it back in. So, pop it out, and I put it out somewhere, and, mark that vehicle as fired, and then mark it as used, and when I'm done, I just take it, pop it right back in the sprue. So why would we do that? What's the advantage? Well, the argument that I agreed with was this is how they were packaged and shipped across the ocean to get to me, and they're just fine. So why not store them that way? Then everything fits back in the box, so I don't have to, store my trays elsewhere. I just stack my counter trays, my counter sheets right back in the box. Boom. And they all fit. So you might be asking, well, why doesn't everyone do that? Well, again, depending on your game, you have to have the kind of counter sheet that the counters come individually. So the drawbacks. If you remove these often enough, they actually start to wear down a little bit, meaning like the sides get a little bit of wear, not tear necessarily, but a little bit of wear, and they don't fit as snug. So at some point, they might start just popping out on their own. The other thing too, like for example, with the fixed ones here, I'm pulling these out all the time, and there's a bunch that I could end up using. So the drawback to that is when you go to put them back, they weren't all cut the same. They're actually cut, each one is almost cut a little bit different than the one next to it. So when you put it back in the sprue, they don't always line up. So some go in real easy, and then some don't fit right, because again, the punch that cut them is slightly different for every single one of these. So sometimes I spend about an extra minute putting a counter in, finding one that doesn't fit well, popping an old one out, moving the difficult fit one over to that spot, just kind of popping them in and out until I find that they all fit reasonably well. Otherwise, if you force a counter, what happens is, if you try and force the counter when it doesn't have a comfortable fit, it actually, you can hear it trying to grab the paper of your counter and rip at the paper because you're forcing it in. So it does have some positives and it has some drawbacks, but this is, for me right now, this is great because I just put my 2 sheets, grab my other sheets, put my lid, and everything fits right there. The other drawback, I guess, would be forgetting where things go. If you pull out all these counters to do a scenario, you might not remember the order in which they go back. So, take the good with the bad and then figure out what works best for you. If it gets to a point where the counters you use the most start falling out, then I guess it might be time to get yourself a counter tray. So that's pretty much all I wanted to share on this particular video. It's already about 38 minutes long, so I apologize for the length, but if you did stick around, thank you for watching. Like I said, go ahead, leave some comments on maybe what wargaming you're doing, gaming in general. Maybe share some of your counter storage tips that you may have. Let's keep the discussion going, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.